of matter, and this is an episode about the benefic lunations of 2024. And we're going to begin right now with the new moon. We just crossed the new moon in Capricorn with the with the ruler Saturn in the 10th house. This is a Mercury ruled ascendant. Here conjuncting a lot of fortune. Interesting. With Mercury in the 7th house. So, and Venus very close to the descendant, 15 degrees Sag, Mercury in Sag. Jupiter day Sol hour. And we are talking about lunations. Jupiter is in the 12th house here. Wouldn't really like this, but I know I want to touch on this before we get to March. January is full of electional stuff, but I want to get to the next lunations. And without further ado, here we are still amidst the and rising forward into the lunar cycle year. And when you press full moons in AstroSeek, you get the new moons as well. So we are very much on the first very benefic new moon in Capricorn. My humble suggestion, I'm going to adopt Lada's suggestion, Lada Dunsheva's suggestion, is to start when the first crescent moon. But it is also okay to start tomorrow. And if you've been watching Victor Astrology, you know that the Mars trine Jupiter, which is going to be sextile with Saturn, is playing out tomorrow on the 12th. And so it is still on time, if you're watching this today, in the beginning of this episode, to remind you tomorrow to, let's say, before the full moon, sozusagen, okay, we're gonna have moon in Taurus. They can be very nice, interesting things to do with the moon in Aquarius as well. We're gonna have a moon on Deneb Algedi as well. If you want to work on things related to the nervous system, and notice that Uranus, okay, Saturn is in Pisces, healing the nervous system. If we get a moon, let's say in Aquarius, and Uranus is in Taurus, so healing the nervous system with nature. Saturn also rules agriculture, and the new moon began in Capricorn. The sun will be in Capricorn. Another thing I want to emphasize and to capitalize on, Bet's election for January 20, right before Pluto ingresses into Aquarius. And I know Victor talked about the two conjunctions of the sun. I haven't watched that one, so I still need to watch that one. And that is the two conjunctions of the sun. Pluto conjuncts the sun in 29 degrees Capricorn for the last time in 240 something years. So we want to capitalize on that. And Pluto conjuncts the sun in 0 degree Aquarius for the first time, opening a cycle of another 240 something years. So the moon will be growing. I don't know where January, like we're gonna look at it in a separate episode, okay? But just while we look again at this new lunation, the moon will be growing and the sun will be conjuncting Pluto on the 21st and 20th. The 20th is more like a culminating cycle, and the 21st is an opening of a cycle. So again, think Aquarius, all things Aquarius, think nervous system in a large scope. It will also be trining Sedna still, okay? So Sedna is kind of like the nervous system of the entire cosmos. So we want to think about our nervous system, the nervous system of, let's say, the forest, of the entire cosmos. Uranus is in Venus, and Sedna is still, I think, in Venus sign. So we're talking about also the feminine, Venus, the planet itself. And I'm just sparking ideas. Okay, I'm just sending sparkles right now that you can take to literally wherever you want. Um, and that is giving us a timestamp already of 248 years. So if you want to begin something, okay, if you also want to conclude something, okay, on the 20th to conclude something, or to have like a talisman, like Beth suggested, of kind of like the final degree of Pluto in Capricorn. Um, and you want to understand the conjunction, okay? A conjunction is still a difficult, it's a hard aspect. Okay, the sun conjuncting, it's not the moon conjuncting a planet, so we bring it from the magic. The sun conjuncting an outer planet. Okay, so it's experimental. Make sure that you're satisfied with the results before you send them on. But the moon will be trining this from Taurus on the 20th, and then you got the 21st. Both are compatible to do great things. And if you want to start something or create foundations for something to grow, that can have a 240 something year cycle, then that can be. And again, Uranus is in Venus sign, as you think about, and vivifying, healing the nervous system of anything Venusian. It can be forests, the land, the planet Venus, which used to be habitable. So we might want to initiate on that again. You think about, Uranus, Venus. If we talk about humanity, it's also a sign of humanity. So think about LGBTQ, stuff like that. Taurus is very much about pleasure, and Aquarius is about being able, if you connect it to being able to have pleasure as an inclusive experience. So pleasure as an inclusive experience. Sedna here can bring healing, thinking about Inuit culture and the singing, the sound, the frequency, okay? Voice, frequencies, music. It's just, I could sit here for probably 300 years just on this one moment in history to give you ideas. So that's just the first new moon. Okay, that's just the first new moon here in Capricorn. And let's switch it up a little bit. Okay, so while the moon is growing, we have a myriad of elections. There are the lunar mentions. There are the Mars in Capricorn, which some do on February, some on January. There is the bisextile here. If you can channel the bisextile between Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars, that can be an excellent time. Well, we kind of like, we can try and see if we can get a Uranus direct on the 19th degree, if it's something benefic still. Now, that is January. Okay. And again, we're going new moons here because we're talking about new beginnings. The next up is going to be on February 10th. And this is the next new moon. February 10th, 2024, we got a new moon on the 20th degree of Aquarius. So, and it's going to square Uranus. But the ruler Saturn is going to sextile Jupiter. So, the word Eureka is a mantra for this one, okay? I want you to start working with this word. Start working as of today. Like yesterday we had the moon and sun. Yesterday the sun, today the moon, trining Uranus retrograde. The word Eureka, okay, Mercury in Jupiter sign. The word Eureka was very powerful. Okay, so think about Eureka and think about Uranus in Taurus. So Eureka, willing consent, Eureka, sensual pleasure, Eureka, healing from trauma. It's Eureka is a sudden flashing solution, insight. It has the energy of Uranus and Mercury in it. So you think about problems that you've been dealing with in your life. You want to get a Eureka moment for. This one is a particular Eureka where if you work with that mantra, it's just a mantra of one word, is Eureka, okay? But just work with it, write it, paint it, dance it, whatever. And that is going to accompany you, okay? It's the second lunation, the second new moon, that is associated with Uranus. So the first one of January was trining Uranus, and it's 1 degree separation. Now we have again 1 degree separation, but a squaring. Okay, and this is a very interesting symphony. So yes, there's going to mundanely there's going to be some crisis around this time, and it's going to be AI related or technology related or even astrology related. Okay. Because those are all things that are symbolized by Aquarius. Pluto is already going to be in Aquarius. Mars is going to apply to conjunct it. And what is this thing good for? Well, it's good if you work with the concept of you to use this crisis as a sudden Eureka. Okay, this crisis itself is the Eureka to someone's problem. Okay, somebody's crisis is somebody's problems is somebody's solutions. Okay, think about, I want to take you back to COVID, because then we had the Saturn Uranus square. And let me tell you my story with COVID. I was in between houses, and I was traveling, okay, because there were no solutions in my country. And so I went to from my motherland to my fatherland, and there were winter shelters for COVID for homeless people. And so we were waiting for the long lockdown to be continued so that we will have a bed, and for the winter to persist so that we will have a bed. But for example, right now in Netherlands, we recently had people freezing to death because they didn't open the shelters, winter shelters, or they didn't let anyone into the winter shelters. But in COVID, they did, and other people were waiting for the lockdown to finish already. Okay, so there was a conflict of interests. Okay, somebody's problems was somebody's solution. Who benefits from the situation? Okay, if a homeless person doesn't have a place to sleep, unless there is a pandemic, there will be a pandemic, because if you think about it cosmically, we are all walking with desires for solutions to our problems. Okay, and our problems themselves are kind of like the karma that incarnates us into this world. Okay, we want to look at something, we want to we want to have a passion, and passion is born out of a craving something. Okay, craving more of something, or craving experiences. And so those people, we are all walking with passions and creative solutions incarnating into our, what some people call vortex, on a material level all the time. And so when many people have a problem that's not being addressed, it can be addressed by other people having a crisis. Okay, if the entire world is going to a world war, a lot of people are going to know in the future what is the nervous system, the vagus nerve, that you need forests to regulate your nervous system, that you need to walk barefoot in nature. Okay, and so you think about 2030 scares people a lot, but the balancing of the nervous system with nature is also something that's going to develop and rise. Okay, Or if you think about ableism and many people not be neurodivergent people not being able to work, maybe because they have toxins since the previous industrial revolution, and all of these people not be, and they're not a, when a person was trying to gaslight me, one of the things I found myself saying to him was, I am like, I'm not a person of like orderly life, if or organized life. Okay, if even if I was a criminal, it would not be organized crime because I'm not an organized person. Okay, so you think about this type of neurodivergent Uranianship to our nervous system, and how our problems, our ailments, our anomalies are basically solutions to certain situations. Okay, and it's not because we are lying or we are crooked. It's not. We genuinely, another perspective on what we call ailment is a creative solution to a situation. Okay, and if you can't work, eventually you will be ill, either because you were meant to do something else, or there are innate desires that are part of your dharma, part of your incarnation into this world, and they're going to manifest themselves. And if they're not doing it smoothly, it's going to happen through a crisis. Okay, I did not become an astrologer just by thinking, oh, what beautiful are the planets in the sky. I never had time for that until I became sick, and then I tried to heal my relationship, so nothing works. But this thing, it actually kind of yields more fruits than most other things alone. And that is what we're having on the Aquarian new moon. Okay, somebody's crisis is somebody's solution, and if it's something to do with your health, you want to look for the nervous system, and you want to think about how much strain I'm putting myself in, stress. Okay, it's a Saturn rule sign that eventually collapsed into itself, because there is another innate desire. There's something more. There is a unique energy in me, because that's very Uranus. There's uniqueness to me that needs to manifest itself in this life. Okay, and then if I mistreat myself, or am afraid, or just genuinely is a situation where I cannot express myself, some crisis is going to happen. And look what the ruler Saturn in Pisces is, sextiling Jupiter. So the restriction and the crisis is actually benefic to grow something of a Venusian nature. Because you think about pleasures, healing the nervous system with experiencing pleasure, or with being in nature, or with nourishing fruits, or growing your, like many things, or painting, creating, and so yeah. And I'm going to remind you again another story that I told when I was kind of like in my very early 20s. I was working for a credit card company of a bank, and I had allergies, and we went to acupuncture, and she asked me all kinds of questions, and she did not know a thing about me. I've been a writer since age 11. She did not know a thing about me, and she said, you must paint and you must write every morning, because I was getting up in rage. I was getting up of bed in rage. She said, you must write and you must create every day. You must do this. And that was basically the beginning of many projects in my life. But that was basically a situation where my body has created a certain situation. We went to an allergy doctor. They didn't find anything. So we went to a sham doctor, and she said something, and that something addressed something that I had been ignoring while telling everyone around me to not ignore, and that was creativity. So such things, such insight. Okay, you go to the doctor, they tell you you need to create, you need to dance, you need to sing, and no other doctor helps you but this doctor. Okay, granted, it's not like a NDE. Okay, but amongst the living. So such crises can appear at this time, as the moon is growing, um, okay, as the moon is growing, we can have a new beginning relative to something that represents nervous system. So you think about the intergalactic one, the forest, trees as nervous system, nervous systems with each other, humanity, the nervous system of humanity. You think about technology as a nervous system based, all of those things, and you think about the word eureka. Um, so yeah, Mars will be applying to conjunct Pluto um, at the end of Capricorn. I know that there are some people desiring to kind of like harvest on that Mars. Um, it's not impossible. Just pay attention that it conjuncts Pluto. Okay, it might give you more of too much of a good thing, you know, can be also terrible. I prefer the earlier Mars, okay, for this. I prefer where Mars is now with the B6 yes, so I much prefer where Mars is now. If you can capture where Mars is now, way more preferable, because Mars conjuncting Pluto, if you work traditionally, okay, but even if, you know, we are in modern times, um, that can be problematic. It is a Mars sextile Neptune, but is a hard conjunction is a hard aspect. Not saying don't do it, just saying that better to capture the B sextile in these days. So this is February lunation. And remember, there's going to be some crisis there, but also on this lunation, we had a lunation basically exactly squaring the nose. You're having a fated new beginning. That's important to remember. March 10th, 2024, we're going to have a new moon in Pisces. And I think this is probably the last, maybe one before the lesson. Look, another 20 degrees Pisces. Yeah? Saturn is on the 11th degree Pisces. You want to take that into account and kind of do something after it leaves that degree. I would prefer. Okay, 20 degrees Pisces. We now have the closing sextile to Uranus. It's a lovely fuga here. I love the sextile to Uranus. It's already direct, coming from Pisces with Jupiter co-present in Taurus. If you get a good election for this one, even if with this weird Saturn, you can, okay, what you want to pay attention is that Chiron is conjuncting Rahu at 17 degrees Aries, okay? That might affect your election. I've talked about the Chiron Rahu stuff, okay, and if it's going to be warlike, then it's going to already be like AI involved, or robots, or something that's supposed to affect the nervous system, like a poison. So you want to be cautious with that one. But what is beginning right now in this closing sextile to Uranus, and this is okay, it's something to do with the world of healing we know. Okay, both the Chiron Rahu gives us that, the Pisces gives us that, and something to do with healing in relation to the land and the structure of the land, the fertility of the land. Okay, the ruler is in Taurus, and mundanely it's probably going to be used to the WEF-WHO kind of enmeshment of healing and digital credit score. But for you, you might want to kind of like have your own take on what do you think is medicine? What do you think is a good economy? And economy is, I want you to think about wealth as the fruits that you eat, how nourishing they are, and how, when does, okay, for example, one thing I saw was the house made of trees. Okay, this Dutch person built a house that was made of trees so that the house grows like a tree and sustains itself. Okay, it's a different type of tending to the house. um, we want to think about that type of technology. Okay, because the technology is basically doing something technically to improve upon a situation. When we engage with nature, we want our fruits to be more nourishing, we want our food to be more nourishing, we want our waters to be clearer. So that is something that I definitely see us tending to. And with Mars here, we want to look at inflammation with the nervous system from a different point of view. Okay. And I want you to think about the holistic aspect of inflammation. It's basically heat. Okay, it's a heat disease for the nervous system. So, but it's stress induced. Okay, it's basically when you have an excess yang, it basically, first of all, it leads to impotence. Okay, it leads to lack of yang, which means Mars that represents the penis just strikes. But what is a part of this creation is basically when we've neglected water and soil. Okay, when we neglected water and earth, when we have neglected yin, and then we have no support for yang. So we want to have enough space in the soil. Think about a tree. To grow, it needs enough space for its roots. Okay, think about how big the tree is going to be above the ground. This is how big and deep the space has to be below the ground. Okay, that's very Uranus. And then it can do the action of growth, okay, the telos of growth, which is a Martian, okay, striking forward into the air, striking deeper into the ground. That's very much a Martian notion, and has kind of like a mirror. It's a double effect that happens there. So we want enough yin. Okay, we want fertile soil. We don't want enough space. So think about, if you think about technology, or think about, I constantly remember the argument between women and men on public transportation, where the women are like, close your legs, because that's what they've been told their whole life. Instead of, cisgender men would try to build an environment that is more compatible to their needs. So you think about, instead of men having to close, to crush their nuts, basically, why can't we build infrastructure where both men and women and whatever genders in, other than that, can open their legs while they're riding or driving, okay? And it's clearer for the root chakra, for the legs themselves, for the second sex chakra, which is a fertility chakra. And so we have a structure of society and of our vehicles that allows us both to open our legs and be stable and solid and healthy, okay, rather than to tell each other to close our legs, okay, which ends up bad on every circumstance, especially when people do want to procreate. So you think about all of these things that I just said and how it's so important for a heat disease. So there will be air flowing, enough air flowing, and that is created by space. Okay. Also, we want to grow something in the soil. We want the soil to have enough drainage in it. And so Uranus can fix that. Okay. Uranus can turn the soil over and fix that. It was the technology of agriculture that was originally created, to turn the soil over, instead of humans doing it alone. But but we are having second thoughts about this and how can it be done more efficiently. So basically, for this Mars, for this inflammation, for the age of air elements to be cured, we need enough soil and enough water. Okay, now we can wait 20 years to understand that, or we can look at it right now and understand that that is what is needed. Okay, it was much better idea to colonize Venus, but the word colonize does not fit to settling in Venus, because you work with something. Okay, and to revivify the Venus fertility begins with Earth. So you can develop like a whole holistic approach to the prospect of humanity, and kind of like how to do it in ways more compatible with the knowledge that we have, and expand on it, and not forget our knowledge. Okay, not forget that we need the four elements and even metal to sustain. Okay, not forget that, because otherwise the age of air will be filled with inflammation, just as the age of water and soil was filled with fungi. Okay, stagnation. Why people don't travel enough? Okay, people have no access to air, and they have no access to energy. And so this age where people had no access to air, we had Tesla's energy inventions. We had a lot of inventions, but we suppressed the scientists, we suppressed the people. People had to go and on a crusade, kind of like although it does move in that age. And now we're heading for the age of air. So there's got to be a lot of air, but to support it, we still need the other elements that seem contradicting. Okay, so think about water and fire. Tagetes is a great oil, marigolds, to heal the water and fire internal fear of each other. Okay, the fear of being extinguished. Okay, the tagetes is excellent for that, and it's one of the most aphototoxic, but also antifungal oils that we have. Okay, so just a little food for thought, because on a mundane level we're gonna see really weird and crooked stuff. I don't want that to be your daily life. Like, you can definitely be a part of a creation of something way better than that. Now we get to the April one. But we already have a Mercury retrograde here. So we're gonna have 3 new moons, including this one. So January, that was now, February and March, 4 new beginnings. This one is more benefic. I call on you, if you begin something tomorrow, that's great. January 2021, still great. We have until January 25, not inclusive, to start some new stuff that are going to hold. Okay, that are going to stand the test of time. So that's pretty much the go-to month, which probably deserve another couple of videos. So this is April, is another new moon, now on 19 degrees Aries, but with Chiron and Mercury retrograde in Aries. Okay, we understand that this is already, okay, we've ended the section, April 2nd, we've ended the section where all planets are direct, okay? We're definitely going to be cautious of starting something when Mercury is retrograde. Nearly anything that we want to start, whether it's a relationship, we need communication, mostly anything we're going to need technology for, and it's going to be a Chiron here. So something is going to start, but I wouldn't necessarily suggest that as a benefic lunation. So we're just going to know that it exists, and it's going to touch on Chiron. It can be nice to heal stuff to do with communication and stuff like that, but it's more like in a roundabout way. Okay. Next up, we have April 24. And this is Scorpio. I think this one is this one eclipse? Okay, I can't see it from here. Where do I see the eclipses? How do I know which one of y'all is eclipses? Okay. So this is interesting because if something is an eclipse, we're absolutely not going to manifest with that. And I think this one is. Oh, it's a full moon. We want the new moon. New moon in Taurus, May 8th. I think this one is an eclipse. Yes, you probably know by this that I have some education to complete. First of all, it's on the 18th degree of Taurus with Venus in Taurus. So there can be something to do. Well, 18th degree is kind of like it can be like a herbal stuff, but it can also be like a poison stuff. And Uranus is on the 22nd degree. Allow me to skip that one, okay? We're talking about benefic elections. Uranus on the 22nd degree and the lunation on the 18th is something you want to just bring in your algols, your procyons, your 22nd lunar mention, your alkites, and everything in the world. And Jupiter is going to be on algol, so Jupiter is magnifying things and algol themes. This is not the time, and I think it's also an eclipse one. So that's not our benefic lunation. Skipping ahead, Gemini. So we're going to have a Gemini new moon on June 6th, 2024. 16 degrees Gemini together with Venus. Now, what we need to check, and I don't know how to check this, is this a Venus Cazimi? Okay, is Venus in the rays of the sun? Or is this a combustion? We had this thing with Mars. Everybody go, Mars Cazimi, talismans, Mars Cazimi. It was a Mars combustion. I thank Ksenia Moore for letting us know that. And I don't know how it works maybe it works okay magically. We usually don't want a combustion in a talisman. And so here, if it is indeed a Cazimi Venus in Gemini, so you could be extra flirty in your relationship. It brings a little bit of lightness, okay? Not monogamy necessarily, but definitely a little bit of lightness to it. Gemini Uranus is going to be on the 24th degree of Taurus. There's just nothing we can do about it. Chiron is going to be on the 22nd degree of Aries. It's not an inflamed Martian one. And we're going to have, like, in this particular one, we have ascendant on Spica. Maybe you want to do something with that. And Mars is on kind of, and then Saturn is kind of like on a malefic degree. Jupiter is already going to be in Gemini. So we begin to have the opportunities to capture Jupiter in Gemini. Okay, one thing I see here is that, all planets but Pluto are direct. Okay, so Pluto is not direct. But this lunation squares Saturn, which means Venus is also squaring Saturn, which means even if it is Cazimi, it squares Saturn. Okay, so Venus and Saturn can be great on a trine, on a sextile, on a square. It's kind of like, your spouse thinking, it's kind of like Beyonce's song of the new shoes now, like thinking about her husband criticizing her appearance, and it's Beyonce. So we don't want that one captured, but definitely there's some new beginning to do that brings in, it's a stellium in Gemini, and that is a lot of conversations, flirtatious maybe, but more like a lot of conversations, a lot of society kind of sociology can be something interesting to learn with this one. Topics around children are going to come to the discourse. Maybe even criticism of kind of like the parenting skills of certain people. Again, not so direct about Pluto, but it's not the one like start a new thing with. And then next up we have July 6th, we have a new moon in Cancer. And there is something interesting in the sky. Okay, so first of all, it's happening around Sirius. And I don't know if it's like around the rising of Sirius. And we have a nice trine here from Saturn. Venus is on the 22nd degree of Cancer. So a couple of considerations. First of all, Uranus is conjunct in Algol in Venus sign. Venus is co-present in Cancer. It's probably not a talisman. Not for me, but you might have a differing opinion. Mars is in Taurus. Okay. The lunation itself is very close to the fixed star Sirius. And Sirius is kind of like the rise of the new year. I want you to take a look at Cracia Tassio's introduction to Sirius. Okay, then how you look at it in the sky. And around the time when Sirius first rises in the sky, check to see if it is strong in the sky, if it is shining brightly, what color it is. And again, check again Kras's video about that. That's going to tell you more about your new year. You definitely want to begin to rise and look at the sky with the sunrise to see where is it. And we are going to have a quasi bisextile with Mars here, but Mars is in Taurus, and Venus on the 22nd degree at the time of the lunation. It is the degree of to kill and be killed, okay, according to Nicolas Stoyanovich degree theory, and Uranus is pretty much on our goal. Again, I like this. You can turn to Sirius. You can also turn to Procyon, okay, especially for this Venus thingy. I can't say that this is what I would use to like manifest my best life, but this is the Cancer lunation. And then August 4, we have the new moon in Leo. 12 degrees Leo with Venus on the anaretic degree of Leo. She does separate from a square to Uranus, which is right on Algol. And again, we have this co-presence of the new moons with Venus. That is not bad. Venus is very strong in Leo. She's strong in fire signs. She's not suffering in fire. It's about connecting things, and fire brings passion. So you can understand that passion and connection are not enemies. Okay? I'm not talking about moony attachment water. I'm talking about bringing things together and having passion. Is not something that we suffer from. But here, this co-presence, and we have a Mars in Gemini again that is way too quick with words. Sharp words thrown way too quickly and co-present with Jupiter, so this is a big issue. We're gonna have a lot of drama. It's the start of a new drama. This is what I see here, but with the presence of Uranus on Algol, again, we already are in the bisextile with Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. That's kind of like in the background. Saturn is retrograde, Pluto is retrograde, Neptune is retrograde, Chiron is retrograde, and Chiron's going to be with Aries, in Aries. So again, it's a new beginning, it's a new drama. Not one I would manifest something with, at least not at the time of the new moon. Then we got Virgo. Virgo is September 3rd, 2024. And this is a lunation on the 11th degree of Virgo with Mercury direct in Leo. Venus is in Libra. Okay, that's one good thing. She's releasing from actually a trine with Pluto. We have an in-orb opposition with Saturn retrograde, and this is also the 11th degree. 11th degree is associated with many things like aircraft, like electricity, but also suicide, okay? According to Nicholas Janovich degree theory, with Chiron retrograde on the 22nd degree. So again, it's a great time to contemplate. With the Saturn opposition can actually halt any suicide ideation. Kind of give, if you have suicide ideation, this can be a reality check, okay, to this. And kind of like rethinking, so it can actually have a benefic impact in the sense of holding you back from doing something that might not be the best resolution for you. But you definitely will be thinking about this. You'll be running into this, or you'll be hearing about this and about this topic. With Uranus Leo, with Mercury in Leo, can be due to something to do with fame, exposure, or just premonitions, okay, intelligence, or also heartbreak, okay, also heart-related circumstances or situations. And you want to make sure that stuff like the vaccines, I don't know which vaccines will be by then, are not somehow associated not only with heart attacks, but also with a feeling of heartbreak. Okay, it can be kind of like on a more holistic level, a person is feeling unseen, and that can create some kind of like a suicide ideation there. It affects the nervous system, so it's the age of nervous system and the power of the nervous system. So we want to make sure that we don't have like so many more people are dealing with suicide ideation, and some of it can be like other than just the horrid circumstances, but also like direct linkage of a certain shot with Mercury shot that they got that affects their heart condition as well. So this is something to check. And with Chiron Aries, that can be something lethal or intentionally lethal. New moon in Libra, October 2nd. That degrees Libra, along with Black Moon Lilith. We have two planets on the 11th degree, and that is Mercury and Venus, both in Scorpio. And the lunation with Black Moon Lilith, very much conjunct in Ketu. So, and in conjunct in Saturn in Pisces. It is squaring Mars in Cancer. So Mars in Cancer is already fallen. Mars will be having its retrograde in Leo in Cancer this year. And Uranus retrograde on a goal. Not the best time to initiate anything. This is a lot about letting go, and some people will unalive themselves even, unfortunately, with this one. November 1st, 2024. Nine degrees Scorpio. We have a new moon in 9 degrees Scorpio. We have a mystic rectangle in the sky with Mercury on the 28th degree of Scorpio, Pluto on the anaretic degree of Capricorn yet again, Uranus 25 degrees Taurus retrograde. This is already conjunct in Algol, and Mars on the anaretic degree of Cancer, fallen, but and opposing Pluto. Okay, so I would rather not start anything volitionally that has the timestamp of Mars opposition Pluto and Uranus on Algol, and kind of like a mystic, alchemical stuff. Let's take a look at the nodes here are in Aries, 4 degrees, Aries and Libra. Yes, we kind of, Pluto is kind of still in orbit to square these. No, I need some time with this. No, okay. It's not a square. That's good. And Mars is not squaring either, which is also good. There's just Mars oppositioning Pluto in the background. It is again calling on Procyon is in place, calling on Medusa Gorgon, Algol is in place. Just remember that Medusa Gorgon is not a female Indra. It's not somebody who wanted dick so much that she got raped. Okay, it's I just like the things that I have been hearing since around October when it comes to Lilith, when it comes to Medusa Gorgon, to Algol. It's kind of like all the weird things that people have been believing kind of pop to the surface. And again, we all believe something weird because we are ignorant of many things at many given times. But yes, Lilith was not supposed to take Adam back when he was domestically violent to her. Algol was not asking for it. And okay, so when we turn to these deities, we need to understand what they're talking about. And so Procyon is the great. Look at people who had Procyon in their chart. We had Nelson Mandela that abolished apartheid by abolishing bloodline segregation within his community and married another woman from another tribe and stood up to the king. It kind of made the rulership, he had Sun on Procyon, the rulership more of the people's rulership because he didn't have to be of certain particular bloodline to be like a king. Also, so we understand how he abolished apartheid. If we get to the root of why and how you did it, took some 3 decades. He was in jail for an entire year Saturn cycle. Okay, and it was an eclipse. He was an eclipse child. I thank Nick Dagenbest for the eclipse info. And the thing is, and another one was JFK, and JFK had his Saturn, and I think midheaven engulfing Procyon, and he was the person that was the president during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He solved it by a line of communication. Okay, he was of Gemini quality. I don't remember if it was Sun Gemini or whatnot. I think it's Sun Gemini. And an open line of communication between the Kremlin and the White House. Okay, so that began to resolve the Cold War. This is also the president would say, "I am a donut" at the fall of Berlin Wall because he was trying to practice his German. But you understand how he got to the root of like how lack of communication between these two giants led to two nuclear. The USA put nuclear stuff next to Russia, and then Russia put nuclear stuff in Cuba, facing the USA. Kind of like it's a form of communication. We see you, we adjust, and then when they open up the actual communication between the Kremlin and this is what we know, of course, and the White House, we avoided a nuclear war, which will later lead also to the fall of the Wall of Berlin. Okay, and so the denuclearificator, the state of Israel, has its midheaven, okay, on Procyon, right? I don't remember where is Israel moon, but the thing is that if you think about the Iron Dome as kind of like, and now the Kela David, which have a problem, like there's a problem with the patent of laser as weapon in the world. If you've been in Maui, you've seen other uses of a similar thing, a similar patent. Okay, we don't know who and what and this, but we know that the technology is quite similar and it can develop in many places at the same time. But the thing is that the use of Iron Dome And laser technology is if somebody is sent towards your country, okay, like a rocket or a plane, then you can send a laser beam now. But before that, it was basically a rocket, and you explode it in the sky rather than it falling. It's kind of like you sweeten the verdict. And also Israel was placed and founded, the raison d'etre for the foundation of the state of Israel. Okay, not the Zionists, not the Jewish people, not the anti-political entity called Israel, in the conglomerate of the nervous system of maps called the Spring of Nations. And that the raison d'etre, if we look at the mid-heaven, is Procyon, is basically to be a stabilizing form in denucleification of, the world. Whilst Israel has, if you go to the Dead Sea, then you would see, kind of like on the bus, the atomic something, the kriya atomic of something in Dimona. This is what's written on the bus. Okay, if you go to the Dead Sea and you take the bus to Dimona, then one of the stations, it has to do with atomic something, and so that is what every tourist can say. So it's not like anything. Yeah. So this textile factory is probably working, and the thing is that if we look at nuke. Nuke was basically the most humane weapon to end war crimes. Okay, if you think about the kamikaze, so how do you deal with the kamikaze? You nuke them. If you think about the mass rapes that happen, how do you stop that? Because eventually all wars are supposed to end in the foundation of something. Okay, and you don't want everybody to be raping everybody. There, you nuke them. Okay, so that is, and so how do we denucleify something? We either create a line of communication, or we abolish the bloodline segregation from within, okay, that's Mandela, or we abolish rape, lack of inclusivity, religious fundamentalism, and this is kind of like the stuff that are hampering on the ecosystem of the Middle East. Okay, something, for example, that I didn't know until the people from Sri Lanka came, and they were wearing these scarves on their heads and on their mouths, kind of like only exposing the eyes. And as an Israeli, you only know that as kind of like a jihad. Okay, but this is actually something that even Palestinians were wearing to use when they were working in the field to block the sunlight, because you work all day in the sun, and the dust, so, or the air, I don't know, but it's kind of like you only have the eyes, and it's not a religious thing. It was just, they were just working in the farm, and that was comfortable to wear to protect you from the sun when you're working long hours. And I'm like, oh my God, I did not know that it did not originate in jihad. Okay, a very educated Israeli 40 years old man and woman. So if we would be taught that, maybe we wouldn't like fear this people walking like this so much, if that was practiced instead of like jihad. And jihad is not what jihad, like I know, like I'm not an Islamophobic person, but this is more like on this Procyon, and it shows up a great deal. So you want to be, when you're working with algol, with reducer gorgon, you want to honor people who survive sexual boundary violation, being isolated, not being believed, and so on and so forth. When you're working with Procyon, you understand that what you are doing, you're abolishing the problem from within, so that the outside cannot impose anything on you. It's no longer relevant, because if we don't have blood segregation within us, it's unacceptable that there would be apartheid. But if you only marry this tribe and only this bloodline can be a king, then why wouldn't white people come and think that they are the origin of rulers because their blood is pure and they come to educate us, and and they limit what we can do in the space, so much so that we see like, oh no, this we don't want, this is a problem. Okay. Also the king is a problem. Also bloodline segregation degenerates your nervous system, and you have degenerated diseases, which are usually of the nervous system. So the world is getting a big chance at cultivating will and consent and biodiversity. Okay, everything falls apart until people kind of like see that. Um, that is something you want to remember, not just for the lunation of like Scorpio, but also kind of in general. And for this Mars opposition Pluto, you definitely want to be working with both Algol and Procyon to abolish, okay, um, extreme violence, which could be Pluto is extreme, Mars in Cancer is also extreme violent, an extreme reactionnaire, the Mercury opposing Uranus retrograde. Okay, it could be kind of like an explosive technology. You think about women could not go on buses. Sorry for being Israel-centric, but A, Israel is quite on the map, and B, you can translate it to wherever it's like similar, like Taurus countries. We had protests, and then women could not go on buses in central Israel because of like fundamentalism that began to happen. So you think about women exploding buses and kind of like a women intifada, which is not at all Palestinian or Muslims, because just kind of like, I want to be able to walk on the bus, and if it's like it's gonna be November, but it's like I'm not going to. I'm not supposed to adjust my what I wear to whatever this person thinks of women. He's not going to be there for me if I live domestic violence, or if I have no place to stay, or I have no place to work. He's making it worse for me. And so you can have like a women bus intifada, okay? Bus explosion. This is cars, okay? And we were talking about bus explosions. Mercury, Saturn is kind of like very, it's in the phase that's already oriented towards freedom. It's a Jupiterian phase. And so you can think about kind of like a technological bombs inside of vehicles due to people who weren't believed for their rape. So it's like women intifada. Can also be LGBTQ intifada. Anybody that can't go on a bus, that can't travel from one point to another because of them. Here it's because particularly of them both being sexual trauma survivor, Algol, and their sexuality. Okay, Mercury, Scorpios can be a combination, other than like a criminal journalism, but it can also be like a combination of androgynous and sexuality, so kind of like sexual orientation. Okay, so like a gay person can't go on a bus, he blows the entire bus up. Okay, kind of like that sort of intifada, not because it's Palestinian or religious in any way, but because it is Jupiter is going to be way into Gemini, but because it's about an explosive rage for having been violated, for not being able to have public. Because if for a woman she's going to be raped if she doesn't get on this bus, or if a woman is sexually harassed on a bus, the bus explodes. It's the intifada, and that is something that Israel really needs to tend to on time. It has a midheaven on Procyon. It's one of the most advanced countries in terms of Declaration of Independence. Gotta be doing the right thing here, because religious fundamentalism, Iran style, will end up with the blowing up of the entire Israel. Like a child can hack into an A bomb here. This is completely all that. Like it's not even the tip of the iceberg of extreme of what can happen here. And it is in the middle of the world, pretty much. So November 2024. So new moon in Sagittarius, something optimistic. Hopefully, December 1. 9 degrees Sagittarius. We have a new moon on Antares. So far, so good. It does square Saturn. I'm not going to single out anybody, but if you think about people who try to kind of like harp in on the Antares when Saturn was squaring it, then they ended up doing something or saying something that had to do with the Saturn skin color of someone, and that kind of like backfired. But all the rest, it was okay. It's kind of like you can manage to have your victory It's just that they're going to be kind of like unnecessary complications, but it's not going to wreck the whole deal. It's still Antares. You're still going to get your way, especially if you're doing it for the higher good and saying, points that are good for you. But there's going to be some sort of a reality check to your ideas here. And Jupiter is scheduled for that. It's retrograde in Gemini. So the ruler of this lunation is in detriment. We need to understand that. And it is square to Saturn. So there are going to be complications. But again, there's still optimism here. But there is still some victory here to be earned, and it's probably if you are going about it and you're intending at least to be on the right, then you might just have a reality check that you didn't understand this detail or you didn't understand this topic, but it's a transitory thing. Okay, you just don't want to launch anything on that very day. But it's still an okay place. It's a victorious place. It's on Antares. We do have both retrograde Mercury and retrograde Jupiter. So you might be saying something that you've longed to say for long and you didn't have the time because Mercury is already back on this point of 20 degrees Sag. And it can be to do with your belief system or maybe even relational or spousal because of Jupiter. And you will need to go over again on how you phrased your claim, but it's important enough to address. Okay, so it's important enough that you address it. You will have a revision of the final edit of what you say. But on Antares, you kind of well, if now with all the retrogrades, when is the time I'm going to get to say what I need to say? Sometimes you better say it now, even though it's imperfect. And you can literally use this, okay? I'm going to say it now, even though it's imperfect. And I have to say it in this way, even though it's not a perfect phrasing. And then you can just go on and say what you have to say. It's going to create some criticism towards you. And some of the criticism will be just, and you will just deal with what is just. And some of it you will just revise because there is information you didn't know. So you'll get the full picture. But your initiatory state of speaking up, and it's mostly about speaking up. There can be taking action, so you might, but again, this Mars is just separating from an opposition to Pluto, so there might be even a bit of explosive action, dramatic action, or massive action that you're taking somewhere. As long as Mars here is fixed, okay, and it's on at the place where it will be retrograde, so you will revise this. It's kind of like a creative impulse that you will just need to revise, but it wouldn't necessarily launch something there. Venus is very Capricornian, is very practical, and she trines Uranus retrograde on Algol, and Pluto is already direct 0 degrees Aquarius, going to spend some time there. And we have already in action the bisextile with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto already in action. Okay, it's applying to perfect, will perfect within 2 years, but we already seen that in action. So some action is going to be happening there simply because you've held it back for so long, but you will be revising both your actions and your words. And you just let it be. December 31, 2024. So this is where we're going to have a new moon again in Capricorn. This time 9 degrees Capricorn, sextiling Saturn. Okay. And Uranus is going to be retrograde on the 23rd degree of Taurus, and it's going to be squaring Venus. So this is interesting because Capricorn is very practical, and Venus squaring Uranus is not exactly practical, even though it's a separating aspect. It is the Venus hard aspect to outer planets is where we have unusual relationships, unusual connection between things. Usually it's what's inside your wallet and what's inside the cashiers at somebody's business, okay? You make a certain purchase of a certain technology or a purchase to rebel something. Money exchange, values are being exchanged in an unusual way. And there's a crisis about this. Okay, so there's some rebellious expenditure. In the background, we're also going to have Mercury in detriment with Jupiter retrograde in detriment, opposing each other. Again, a separating aspect. But this is where the year gets a little bit more like complicated, and this is another time. So this is also why it's so important to capitalize on our the pretty much deadline that we have around this January. Okay, like we're not gonna have another January this year. Not we're not gonna have another January. Like the astrology is not gonna be the same this year, and so but with the Uranus, you're gonna have like a Eureka, and Eureka is a mantra for this year, because you're gonna need it. It's necessary. First of all, you get the mantra Eureka, healing the nervous system, and doing it in a pleasurable way, and then you get the troubles. Okay, so your mantra is Eureka, healing the nervous system, do it in a pleasurable way, in a way that works with nature. Okay, and then you get the problems, and there are going to be plenty of problems for you to innovate with the mantra that you're setting in January. So remember when I said that the new moon in Capricorn in my January astrology for all the signs, except for Taurus, I still owe you Taurus. I said, this new lunation is going to carry in a voice that says, but remember when, okay? Now it's getting a little bit different because during these problems, you're also going to be having this January thing that you're doing tomorrow or today, depending on what you're watching this episode, or until the 24th, 23rd of this month. And that is going to carry you through to center you in the upheavals of 2024. Okay? New moons are just kind of like the new beginnings. I also address 2024 as a fuga, and this is what I call the synodic cycle. I don't call it like synodic. I did not invent synodic cycles. It exists for thousands of years. But 2024 is a fuga, where I look at the synodic cycles, basically the cycle between one planet and another. Okay, so Sun and Uranus, Sun and Neptune, and so on and so forth. And looking at those new beginnings, okay? When does something conjunct something, it opens up a new cycle. Okay, so the new beginnings in 2024, there are going to be an abundance of them. We're always on the sign of new beginnings. You can never hold back spring, even if it's the Arab Spring. Okay, so this is, it's going to be that kind of an interesting time. Okay. And the Eureka mantra and the nervous system healing in a more natural way is going to accommodate for a lot of innovation that keeps you rooted and allows you. And you'll notice that when you step on the ground, on the soil, you begin to think about flying objects. Okay, you begin to fly basically. Okay, you learn how to fly this year. For some of you, it's going to be a very literal, they're going to be flying cars. Somebody's going to have to drive them. But we're learning how to fly this year. We absolutely learn how to fly. You learn how to fly by setting your feet in the soil. Also, when you learn how to swim, okay, you do practice it on the ground. So the ground is where you lift off from. Okay, it's also where you land eventually, even if it's on Mars, on Venus, on, well, Uranus is a bit of a gas giant, it's kind of stinky. But the thing is that it's from the ground. Oh, yeah, there's a new refrigerator. This is a great time. This is an amazing story. We got it before the new moon, a couple of hours before, and now we kind of like activated it after the new moon. And the thing is, there was an issue with the gas. I'm not joking. When you bring in a refrigerator and it has gas in it, you can't immediately start it. You have to wait a couple of hours. So now it's basically, mind you, I want to check. This is, you can have a print screen here. This is Jupiter, Venus, Ascendant Cancer, new moon 21 degrees Capricorn. Venus is in the 6th house of health and pets. I don't know. Jupiter is in the 11th, so this is a famous refrigerator now. And yeah, Saturn in the 9th. Venus in Sag, Jupiter in the 11th, health, I don't know, work, I don't know. But this is the, and midheaven also ruled by Jupiter. So we have a moon Jupiter. The moon is in Capricorn, but it's kind of like a benefic new moon here. This separates from a square. It was fated for this thing to have its mark and kind of like continue to be here. The descendant is on Mars. It's exalted Mars, so hopefully it's going to be working well with a lot of duration for many years. But Saturn is in the 9th house, and it's not a but, it's a maybe, thanks God, I don't know. And we're talking about the technological device. We have Mercury here. Mercury is in detriment. It's releasing from the square to Neptune. It's not doing anything else, just sitting there in the 6th house. I don't know, it's in the 6th house. But it's maybe it's going to be using us for like work or service or something like that. I don't know. Very interesting. So this is a live broadcast from a new refrigerator. Jupiter day Venus hour. Jupiter day Venus hour. And we get the Jupiter Venus. Okay, it's a nice reception here. So it's a refrigerator. That's what I gotta say. Back to December. Back to December 31. Okay, so again, 9 degrees Capricorn, sextile Saturn. There's going to be a T-square with Saturn, Jupiter, and Mercury. This is where you want to have this January eureka with you. Maybe you want to have like a magnet on your refrigerator, okay, with the eureka thing. You kind of like consecrate it in one of the lunar mansions that we have now. Yeah, so it's funny because we live in Israel, and so we were told kind of like to prepare ourselves that there may be electricity cuts or something like this. We weren't sure about like whether to buy a new one, not to buy a new one. Is it like the end of the world or not? Now we have a new one. So yeah, this is the story. So it shows to begin with after the new moon, to work after the new moon. You saw that there was a limitation that held it back so that it can last, I hope, even though Mercury is in detriment. But it brought a lot of joy. That's true. So talk about a refrigerator. I remind you, we talk about a refrigerator. So it's Jupiter day, Venus hour. Even though Venus is in the 6th, I'm going to release this episode, and I hope it's useful. Thank you for the like.